The wind that morning in Black Ridge, Georgia, carried the stillness of a place that had taught itself to pretend nothing ever happened. Tree-lined streets curved around old Victorian houses, their porches painted in faded whites and hopeful blues, while picket fences tried too hard to whisper safe. But underneath the layers of postcard charm, the air held something quieter, something suspicious, something waiting. Alyssa Grant wasn't supposed to stop here. She had left Charlotte before sunrise, heading to Baton Rouge for a Veterans Leadership Summit. She hadn't worn her uniform in years, but the discipline never left. She planned her fuel stops, knew the safest motels by zip code, and always kept a digital backup of her military ID, just in case. It was 8:43 a.m. when she pulled into the parking lot of Wilbur's Market in Delhi, an old-fashioned grocery store with a rusted sign and a single security camera angled too high to be useful. Alyssa only wanted a black coffee and maybe a banana before getting back on the road. She walked in quiet, purposeful strides. Jeans, fitted jacket, nothing flashy. Her short-cropped hair framed a face that didn't invite small talk. Not because it was unkind, but because it carried stories no one could afford to hear before lunch. She was exiting with her coffee when she saw the elderly woman stumble at the curb. Eleanor Briggs, 85, widowed, still drove herself everywhere, had tripped on a cracked pavement, stone, and fallen hard, her purse sprawling beside her, like a spilled life. Alyssa didn't hesitate. In one fluid motion, she set down her coffee, crouched low, and supported Mrs. Briggs by the shoulder, gently steadying her. "Don't move yet," Alyssa said, calm as a medic. "You might have bruised your hip." Mrs. Briggs winced, clutched Alyssa's wrist. "Thank you, sweetheart. I'm sorry, these legs aren't what they used to be." Alyssa smiled briefly. "Happens to the best of us." She stayed kneeling beside the woman, waiting for the store manager, who had gone inside to grab a first aid kit. That's when the squeal of tires broke the calm. A county cruiser jerked into the parking lot, followed closely by another. Sheriff Warren Coates stepped out before the car fully stopped. He was tall, thick around the middle, and wore mirrored sunglasses that seemed more costume than function. His hand hovered near his holster. Not drawn, but not at rest either. "What's going on here?" he barked. Alyssa rose slowly, both palms visible. "This woman fell," she explained. "I was helping her up." Sheriff Coates didn't respond. He was looking at Alyssa's skin before her words. Mrs. Briggs tried to speak. "Officer, she's the one who—" "Ma'am," Coates cut in sharply, "I need you to step aside." Alyssa, now standing fully upright, kept her posture neutral. "Sir, I'm a former Marine. I was just assisting." "Turn around," he ordered. "Hands where I can see them." For a moment, it was silent. The breeze stilled. Even the traffic light across the street seemed to hesitate. "Excuse me?" Alyssa asked, voice measured. He stepped forward, motioning to the two deputies who were now flanking her. "We got a call about a suspicious incident involving an elderly woman. You match the description." "She's not suspicious," Mrs. Briggs cried. "She helped me. I fell." But by then, Alyssa's arms were being twisted behind her back. She didn't fight. She knew better. Resistance, even in truth, only escalated the lie. "I'm not resisting," she said clearly. The cuffs snapped too tightly, one dug deep enough to draw blood. As Sheriff Coates leaned in close, he noticed the military dog tags around her neck and gave a mocking smirk. "Oh, a soldier girl, huh? Playing hero?" Alyssa didn't answer. Her gaze stayed forward. Her silence wasn't submission. It was a calculation. People had begun gathering, phones held up. One bystander whispered, "She was helping. I saw it." But no one stepped forward. As the cruiser door slammed shut behind her, Alyssa caught the faint reflection of herself in the window. Calm, centered, restrained. But beneath it all, something far more dangerous than anger stirred. Clarity, because Blackridge had just made the worst mistake of its quiet little life. The cell smelled of bleach and something older, like mildew and memory. Alyssa Grant sat on the metal bench bolted to the wall, her wrists raw from the cuffs, a thin line of dried blood still marked where the steel had dug in. The officer who processed her hadn't offered bandages, hadn't even made eye contact. She didn't expect kindness, but she logged every detail. The intake form listed her as African American female, age 39, transient. That word caught her attention. Transient. As if her presence here, in this town, invalidated her credibility. As if moving through a space without belonging to it made her disposable. They took her military ID, never gave it back. "I need to speak to my attorney," she had requested calmly. The booking officer looked amused. "You'll get whoever we assign. That's how it works around here." And that, Alyssa thought, was the first honest thing anyone had said since she'd entered Blackridge. Her first night in detention was less about confinement and more about erasure. The guards forgot her dinner tray. When she knocked on the door to request medical attention for her wrist, they responded by turning on the overhead light every 30 minutes through the night, calling it a security check. By morning, Alyssa had slept only in fragments. Still, her mind was alert. Her pulse was calm. She sat cross-legged on the cot, breathing in through her nose and out through her mouth, techniques learned during sniper training to steady a trigger finger 6,000 feet in Afghanistan. They thought they were breaking her. What they were doing without realizing was waking someone far more dangerous than a wounded woman. At 10:14 a.m., a young man in a loose-fitting gray suit entered the visitor room and gave a nervous smile. He looked barely older than one of her youngest recruits from the 3rd Recon Battalion. His tie was uneven, and his briefcase was scratched and too small for the pile of papers he carried. "Ms. Grant," he said. "Alyssa," she corrected. "You're my court-appointed?" He nodded. "Derek Shaw, first year on the job. I handle misdemeanor stuff mostly. Loitering, trespass, petty theft. But when I saw your file," he trailed off, looking up at her face. "They've charged you with felony assault and attempted robbery of an elderly person." Alyssa raised an eyebrow. "That's inventive." He chuckled awkwardly. "They're offering a plea, 6 months jail time. You'd be out in 4 with good behavior." "No," Derek blinked. "Excuse me?" "I said no. I'm not pleading guilty for helping an old woman stand up." "I get that," he said, opening the file. "But the system here doesn't scare me," she interrupted, her voice firm but not angry. "I've had insurgents aim at me from rooftops. I've pulled comrades out of burning Humvees. You think I'm going to flinch because some backwater sheriff wrote fiction on a police report?" Derek stared, then slowly closed the file. "You served?" Alyssa nodded. 17 years. Navy sniper. Bronze Star. Joint Service Commendation Medal. I was attached to JSOC for 2 deployments. I've done things I can't even explain to you because they're sealed behind 3 layers of clearance. Derek sat straighter. "They took my ID and they never logged it. They say the body cam malfunctioned." Mrs. Briggs was silenced. "And I'm in here because I made the mistake of being helpful while black." Silence fell between them. Not hostile, sober. "Okay," Derek finally said. "Tell me everything." Over the next 40 minutes, Alyssa gave a soldier's report. Every word is deliberate, precise. She didn't ramble. She didn't rage. She informed like someone who had spent her life in situations where mistakes meant death and precision meant survival. Derek took notes. Then he took more. "They've done this before," she concluded. "I've been watching in here. 3 other black inmates came through since I was brought in. All passing through. All charged with exaggerated offenses. 2 have taken lead deals already. The 3rd disappeared." Derek leaned back, mind spinning. You think this is systemic? I think this is engineered. He didn't respond right away. When he finally did, his voice was low. I'll need more than testimony. I'll need video, internal memos, data. You'll get it, Alyssa said, eyes focused. But you need to know something, Mr. Shaw. What's that? They picked the wrong Marine. It was a cold Tuesday morning when the video surfaced online. Grainy footage taken on a phone by a bystander in the Wilbur's Market parking lot. The angle was poor, the sound crackled, but it showed enough. A tall black woman is standing calmly beside an elderly white lady. Two officers are moving in fast. A brief, brutal arrest. And just before the screen tilted down, a single voice off camera muttered, "She was helping that woman." The video didn't go viral, not yet, but it found its way to Trevor Washington. He was sitting in his apartment in Houston, scrolling through his feed when he froze. The image on screen, grainy as it was, struck something deeper than memory. Whisper. He whispered the name aloud, the old call sign echoing across time. Alyssa Grant, the quietest shot in their unit. 3 tours, 1 broken rib from diving onto him during a rooftop ambush in Kabul. The kind of soldier who didn't raise her voice, but never missed her mark. Within the hour, Trevor had enhanced the clip, tracked the location, and sent a message through a secure veteran network. Then he made a call. "Colonel Davis," he said, voice shifting into military formality, "we've got a situation. Whisper's been taken." Meanwhile, in Black Ridge, Alyssa sat across from Derek Shaw again. The visitor room was colder today, but her eyes hadn't dimmed. If anything, they looked sharper, like someone adjusting for wind and range. "They're accelerating the arraignment," Derek said, "pushing it through before we get our motions filed." "Because they're scared," Alyssa replied. "That's a sign." Derek nodded, tapping his pen nervously. "I filed a FOIA request for body cam footage. They replied within an hour. System malfunction. That never happens. It's too clean, too fast." "They're hiding something," she said. He looked up from his notes. "You said you were watching patterns. Got anything?" Alyssa slid a folded piece of paper across the table. It looked like a doodle, but Derek saw it immediately. Coded timestamps, guard rotations, cell searches, medical access logs. "You're building a case from the inside," he murmured. "I'm trained to observe," she said simply. The same afternoon, Colonel Patricia Davis, now working in a Pentagon advisory role, reviewed Trevor's message in her private office. When she saw the video, she didn't blink. She picked up the phone and called someone she hadn't spoken to in 5 years. General Raymond Ellie, 4-star. "This isn't a rumor," she told him. "It's her." Ellis listened quietly as she laid out the facts. When she finished, he spoke only once. "Prepare everything. If they're detaining Master Sergeant Alyssa Grant under pretenses, we'll move." Back in Black Ridge, Deputy Maria Alvarez hesitated before knocking on Derek Shaw's office door. Her uniform looked pressed, but her eyes carried the weight of something broken. "I don't have much time," she whispered. Inside, she handed him a flash drive. "Internal memos," she said. "Arrest quotas. Lists of high-yield suspects, mostly black travelers. They call it phishing. Sheriff Coates signs off every month." Derek froze. "You understand what this means?" he asked. She nodded. "I didn't sign up for this. I became an officer to serve, not to hunt people passing through." She turned to leave, but paused. "Tell her she's not alone." That night, Derek sat in his cramped office, walls covered in sticky notes, timelines, printouts. Sasha Lynn, the investigative journalist he had reached out to, joined him via video call. "I've been watching arrest patterns in small towns across the South," she said. "Black Ridge stands out. Over 70% of arrests are black travelers. Charges tend to be inflated. Almost all take plea deals." "I have evidence," Derek said. "I need hard proof." He sent her everything: the video, the memo, Alyssa's coded report, Maria's files. There was a pause. This, this could be national, she whispered. And then, at 3:14 a.m., Alyssa was woken by the sound of keys turning. Up, a guard said. You're moving. To where? Protective custody, which in Blackridge meant one thing, isolation. They were trying to cut her off from other inmates, from her lawyer, from the truth. But as she walked silently through the dim corridor, past flickering lights and peeling paint, Alyssa Grant didn't feel fear. She felt ready. Because what they didn't understand was that this wasn't a breakdown. It was a countdown. The courthouse in Blackridge wasn't used to traffic. Its wooden doors creaked every time they swung open, as though protesting the burden of truth. On most days, a parking ticket was headline news. But today, something shifted. By 7:45 a.m., the narrow street outside was lined with unfamiliar silhouettes. Men and women stood in silent formation, back straight, hands behind them, feet shoulder-width apart. No chants, no signs, no slogans, just the quiet discipline of those who had once followed orders with life or death consequences. Veterans, Alyssa's people. The wind pressed against their uniforms, navy blues, marine dress greens, desert camo coats layered over civilian jeans. Some had medals pinned to their chests. Others wore nothing but their silence. They had come for her. Inside, the air was heavier than usual. Prosecutor Daniel Remick adjusted his tie 3 times before walking into the courtroom. He had reviewed his strategy again and again. Paint Alyssa as a volatile veteran, unstable, trained to kill. The town was with him. Sheriff Coates was with him. The judge, well, Judge Alan Hurst had never ruled against law enforcement in 22 years. What could go wrong? At 9:03 a.m., Alyssa Grant entered the courtroom wearing a plain navy suit. No makeup, no jewelry, no apology. Her wrists bore faint marks where the cuffs had bitten weeks before, but her posture never wavered. When she walked past the gallery, veterans nodded silently. Some placed their hands over their hearts. She acknowledged no one, but she felt every gaze like armor on her shoulders. At the defense table sat Derek Shaw, scribbling last-minute notes. Beside him now was Sofia Rodriguez, the military attorney General Ellis had sent 2 nights prior. She was razor-sharp, her every word clipped like a salute. She didn't believe in mercy, only in proof. Judge Hurst cleared his throat and banged the gavel. This court is now in session. Let's proceed. The prosecution began with fire and fiction. Your Honor, the defendant is a former military sniper, trained in high-risk engagements, who assaulted an elderly civilian and resisted lawful arrest, Remick declared. Rodriguez stood calmly. Objection, Your Honor. We'll demonstrate that not only is this untrue, but it is a deliberate distortion of the facts. Save it for testimony, the judge muttered. The trial had begun. Their first witness was Dr. Gerald Price, a so-called expert in combat trauma behavior. He claimed that veterans with sniper training often developed paranoia and became prone to violence. Rodriguez dismantled him with 4 questions. Have you ever met Ms. Grant? No. Have you reviewed her military psychological evaluations? No. Are you licensed to practice psychology in the state of Georgia? Not currently. And have you been paid for testimony by this county before? Yes. Your Honor, Rodriguez said, turning to the judge, let the record show that the prosecution's expert has no direct knowledge of the defendant and a financial interest in these proceedings. The gallery murmured. Judge Hurst banged his gavel again, but the damage was done. Next came the deputies. Each told a nearly identical story. Alyssa was aggressive, refused orders, grabbed at an officer. Rodriguez requested the body cam footage. The judge allowed only edited portions. But even in the carefully sliced video, Alyssa's compliance was evident. Her hands are up. Her voice was steady. The contradiction was impossible to ignore. And then, at 11:28 a.m., The double doors at the back of the courtroom opened, and everything stopped. Four-star General Raymond Ellis entered. His uniform was immaculate. Silver stars gleamed against his shoulders. He carried no entourage, no weapons, only the weight of his office. He walked down the center aisle, not looking left or right, and sat directly behind the defense table. No one had invited him to speak, but his presence spoke louder than any statement ever could. The judge stiffened. Remick paused mid-sentence. Even Sheriff Coates, seated across the room, swallowed hard. Everyone in that room suddenly remembered. Alyssa Grant was not just a defendant. She was one of the nation's elite. During the recess, whispers moved like wildfire. Did you see who walked in? He's from the Pentagon. Why is a general sitting behind a defendant? Because she wasn't just a defendant. She was a decorated Marine, framed in a small-town courthouse, whose quiet dignity had summoned the weight of those who still remembered what honor looked like. When the trial resumed, the defense called its first surprise witness, Mrs. Eleanor Briggs, the woman Alyssa had helped. She appeared via video feed from her hospital bed, frail but focused. "They told me not to speak," she said. "Told me I must have been confused, but I wasn't. That woman helped me. She never hurt me. They lied." Her testimony cut through the room like a blade. Remick didn't bother to cross-examine. Outside, the veterans didn't cheer. They didn't clap. They stood still, like pillars of something the town had long forgotten. Justice, the storm didn't come with thunder. It came with signatures. At 9:12 a.m., the courtroom doors opened once again, not for a defendant, not for a general, but for three federal agents in dark suits. They entered silently and sat in the last row. No introductions, no theatrics, but the atmosphere shifted. Even Judge Hurst noticed. The agents didn't look at the prosecution. They looked at the system and everyone who had helped protect it. Rodriguez began the defense's final assault with surgical precision. She introduced internal memos, anonymously leaked by Deputy Alvarez, outlining arrest quotas targeting black travelers. She then presented emails confirming Sheriff Coates's financial relationship with Oak Ridge Detention Services, a private prison contractor that paid bonuses per conviction. Each fact landed like a hammer. Each silence from the prosecution said more than their objections. Then came the unreleased body cam footage, the real footage, restored by a digital forensics expert flown in overnight. The courtroom watched, frame by frame, as Alyssa gently helped Mrs. Briggs sit on the curb, never once raising her voice, never resisting. In the background, Mrs. Briggs could be heard saying, "She's helping me. Please don't hurt her." The judge tried to suppress it. Rodriguez didn't flinch. "This," she said to the jury, "is the truth." And it was buried, not by mistake, but by design. The final blow came not from Rodriguez, not from the general, not even from Alyssa. It came from Mrs. Briggs' grandson, David. He stepped forward nervously, hands shaking, and played an audio recording captured on his phone. Sheriff Coates's voice was unmistakable. "If your grandmother keeps saying what she's saying, you can forget your business loan. We'll have state auditors crawling through your books." The room froze. A courtroom used to silence now sat inside something else entirely, shame. When Alyssa was finally called to testify, she didn't speak about injustice. She spoke about service. "I've worn a uniform for most of my adult life, not because I wanted medals, not because I wanted praise, but because I believe in this country's highest ideals, even when it fails to meet them. I never imagined," she said quietly, "that I'd be arrested for showing the same compassion I showed my fellow Marines on the battlefield. But I stand here today not as a victim. I stand here as proof. Proof that some systems don't collapse until you make them feel your silence, your dignity, your truth." She looked at the jury, her voice unwavering. "And the truth," she said, "has arrived." The jury deliberated for 47 minutes. Alyssa Grant, not guilty on all counts. But it didn't end there. Rodriguez immediately filed for dismissal with prejudice, barring any future attempts to retry the case. As the courtroom erupted in quiet gasps, Judge Hurst hesitated, then looked up and saw General Ellis staring back, expressionless, unmoving. "I have no choice," he muttered. "Granted." Then the gavel fell for the last time in that courtroom, and the spell of Black Ridge broke. Epilogue. One woman, one uniform, one reckoning. Within a week, Sheriff Coates was indicted on multiple federal charges, civil rights violations, falsifying evidence, and witness intimidation. His deputies, 6 in total, either turned state's witness or resigned under pressure. Judge Hurst was placed under federal judicial review for gross misconduct and removed from the bench within 3 months. The Oak Ridge Detention Services contract was terminated. The Department of Justice launched a full investigation into quota-based arrest systems across 6 states, citing Black Ridge as a case study in systemic abuse hidden in plain sight. Alyssa didn't return to the battlefield. Instead, she founded the Sentinel Project, a nonprofit offering legal, emotional, and tactical support to veterans, especially veterans of color, facing unlawful prosecution. She named the headquarters Station 17, a nod to her unit's number, and to the 17 seconds it took for her to be handcuffed on that grocery store pavement. Veterans from across the country joined her. Law schools studied her case, and small towns started looking over their shoulders. At the graduation ceremony of Black Ridge's newly reformed police academy, a diverse group of recruits stood in crisp uniforms, waiting to be sworn in. Alyssa Grant stepped forward. "This badge," she said, holding up her old military ID, now laminated into a ceremonial keepsake, "doesn't protect you from consequences. It obligates you to courage. And sometimes courage means breaking ranks to do what's right." She raised her hand and administered the oath herself. And for the first time in Black Ridge's history, justice didn't wear a robe. It wore a scar and stood tall anyway. Lessons from Alyssa Grant's story. Injustice can hide behind uniforms and paperwork, but it cannot stand against truth for long. The case revealed how easily racism can embed itself in routine systems, especially when no one is watching. Dignity in silence is louder than rage. Alyssa never yelled. She never begged. She watched. She remembered. And then she dismantled everything with grace and precision. Veterans aren't just protectors abroad. They are defenders of justice at home. The military taught Alyssa how to serve. Injustice taught her where to aim. It takes more than evidence. It takes community. From Derek to Rodriguez, Alvarez to General Ellis, and every silent veteran standing outside the courthouse, change came when people stood together. The law is not inherently just, but it can be made to answer. Through persistent pressure, tactical exposure, and public will, even the most corrupt systems can be brought down.